Good morning. You're listening to BLAINESWORLD Show, heard each Wednesday here on WPVM LP in Asheville, North Carolina, 103.7. You can also listen online at WPVMFM.org and watch on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And to that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Sarah Benoit. And welcome aboard, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, and Sarah, you can also wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world. Okay, if anybody's watching.
Hello.
Great. Okay, I should mention that I've known Sarah, I guess, almost since I first came to Asheville. And Sarah is president of Creative Original Incorporated, co-founder and lead instructor of the JB Media Institute. She has been working as a web designer and digital marketer since 2003 and teaching classes in SEO, social media marketing, online advertising, public relations, blogging, email marketing, and more since 2006. She is also a national public speaker who has given talks across the U.S. on marketing, communications, and creativity. And Sarah, the question I always ask a guest the first time I meet them is, in terms of, you grew up where, for example? Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up moving around quite a bit. My dad was a Baptist minister, and I sort of finalized my childhood in New Jersey. So I do tell people I'm from New Jersey.
Okay, and that's where I think we first contacted, because I met you several years ago when we were talking in New Jersey, and I lived a large part of my life in Jersey. But the question is, when you were a little girl then growing up in New Jersey, did you always know you wanted to be this tech queen or tech guru?
No, not at all. I'm definitely what I consider to be an accidental entrepreneur. So I never knew that I would be a business owner. I had no plans for that whatsoever. And then with technology, I was really not in contact with technology until I was around, I would say about 25 when I got my first corporate job. So I had studied biblical literature when I was in college, and I was a writer. And then when I left school, I became a bartender. So I was just traveling the country and having a great time, and landed in Asheville as kind of a wayward wanderer, just in my Volkswagen bus, having a good time. And once I got here, I got my first corporate job, and then I realized I was not a good fit for the corporate environment. And so I forged out on my own. And one of the first things that I learned about was search engine optimization. And as a writer and a communicator, there was a lot of possibility there.
Well, your story is kind of an interesting one in the sense that most of the stuff you've learned or teach was kind of self-taught. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely, yes.
And how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so when I came to Asheville, like I said, I got my first corporate job about a year and a half after I moved here. I was working in corporate healthcare, and I figured out pretty quickly that was not really an environment that was very exciting for me. It was a little bit stuffy for my taste. And yeah, when I started just exploring what the possibilities were of learning something different, I had met a woman in Boone, actually, and accidentally sort of run into her, became friends with her. We started talking about different things. We were both writers, and she started talking to me about search engine optimization and Google technology. And I'm what I refer to as an extrovert that scares other extroverts, and I love being connected to people. So the internet was really exciting, and just being able to express so many different things online as that started to come about in the early 2000s was exciting. So I just dove right in. I knew I was going to get laid off from my job. So I took a year to start studying online, and I just researched and studied as much as I possibly could, and started with SEO, and then moved into social media, and then moved into web design and development.
Now, the challenging thing, I guess, for you as an entrepreneur is that it's kind of field that you're always having to learn new stuff, or always have it, unfortunately for you, you can't just kind of sit back and what you did even a year ago. I mean, it changes that quickly, or not even that quickly. It changes like almost daily, if not, it's.
Yes, it definitely, I feel like every 30 days, there is a lot of new things for me to understand about the technology. And now, of course, if you're working in anything digital, there's also this larger sort of ethical conversation going on that's connected to the legality of the technology that we're using. And so that's been an even like bigger, more interesting part of the industry that's changing on a regular basis. So I, tell people that sometimes I feel like my job is simultaneously making me old and stay young at the same time. I'm like, I can never really relax and think I know everything and just enjoy it because I know something is changing on Instagram while I do that. But at the same time, I feel like being in a career like this, you have to stretch your mind all the time. You have to be willing to adapt constantly. You have to be willing to absorb new strategies and ideas pretty much every week. And so, to me, it just keeps it really exciting and never ever gets boring.
Do you have a preference as to the teaching you do? And we'll talk a little bit about that versus the actual doing kind of thing. That I've known you as a teacher. I've taken several of your seminars through Asheville SCORE. And so you do that part of the stuff you do, but you also do stuff for companies, where you're not teaching per se, you're actually doing. Do you have a preference as to those two, which you prefer?
Yeah, I definitely think my heart lies in the educational part of what I do, although I still get excited about doing the work. So, a lot of times when I'm consulting with people and I'm strategizing with them, and then I get to help them look at their data and see the results of what we've done, that's the part where I think I'll never get tired of that, right? Watching people succeed, watching them win, watching them grow their business or get attention to something that's really important that deserves the attention. That's always exciting. But I think in my heart of hearts, I love educating people. I love helping them explore a new world in some cases at times, and really empowering them to feel like they have a place in the world. A lot of people are struggling that the internet has so many things on it. They don't really know where they fit in or their brand fits in or their messaging fits in. They're often comparing themselves to other people. And so I feel like as an educator, I work with mostly adults and I get to really help them build their confidence and like stake their claim out in the world about the work that they do and why it's valuable.
One of the things I would imagine has happened to you over the last year is that if anything, I would imagine you're perhaps even busier than you ever were, because if people can't go to work or they can work out of their home, they kind of need you even more, or your skills that you can help them learn than when they were in a corporate environment. Is that a truism that, like, have you had a busy year?
Yes, we've had a very busy year. I do think the saddest thing for me is that at the beginning of 2020, my national speaking career was really taking off. And so I was traveling quite a bit, attending different conferences, sharing different information, just getting invites across the country, which is really exciting. So all of that came to an abrupt end a year ago. Which was a little hard to accept because I had worked quite a few years on building that network. But we were able to move pretty quickly into virtual events. I've been teaching online for 7 years. And so a lot of people definitely called me to really get help moving various things into the virtual world that couldn't be in person anymore. And so it really almost opened up completely new opportunities that we maybe never would have had otherwise. And so even though I think it was a lot of work to adapt the companies, it was still, I got to keep my job and I got to really help people, which felt great last year to really come together with folks and solve problems and make completely new products and programs and things like that available.
It's funny you said that because a good friend of mine who's a motivational speaker says almost a word for word what you said. He was having his best year ever in March, and then all of a sudden it became his worst year ever. And it ties into a question I'd like to ask you about the fact that can you, through Zoom, through technology, communicate with people and teach people and have them learn as well as when they were in a classroom? How do you feel about the difference between the two?
So yeah, it's interesting because I will always love being in person with
Yeah.
people, especially as a public speaker and an educator. I really enjoy that energy that you exchange with physical people in a room. And there's certainly learning styles that are, each individual person has their own learning style. So some people, it's really important for them to have that physical exchange of energy in order to stay focused and to actually absorb the information. But there are, I think, a lot of other people who have different learning styles where they really thrive online. They're in a space where they're really comfortable. You know, they don't have to spend all the extra time going somewhere and doing all of that. And so I think really for me, I miss the in-person stuff. I look forward to that coming back. But the challenge that I sort of accepted last year was, how do I still make things really interactive, really connected, and really effective, even if we're doing it through, you know, screens only. And I feel really proud of myself that I made that work. And a lot of my classes were really popular last year because I've had so much time to work on it, you know, and so it was easy for me to figure out a way to really generate that energy and generate connections between my students and things like that. So it's about just learning how to use the tools and
It's
really
funny
revamping your approach.
you say that, because as you're mentioning it, I'm thinking to myself, I kind of like actually doing my radio show or Facebook Live show here, because not only, you said, don't have to have you come in and talk and do all that stuff, it's a lot easier for me to do the interview just like we're talking now and just kind of having a conversation with you, as opposed to being in person. I'm kind of getting used to this, almost to the extent that I don't know if I ever want to go back to the other. You know, plus I can
Yeah.
also, I can speak to you at your home now. You can be comfortable, convenient, working at your schedule rather than an artificial schedule at the station. So it's just, it's kind of interesting. You just have to get used to it, I guess, and work on it.
Yeah, and my student base expanded to everywhere in the world.
I
So
can
I got to
imagine.
teach classes over the last year where I had students in China, students in Peru, students in Russia, all across the United States. And so that was really exciting to be able to connect with people in what felt like every corner of the globe sometimes. And that wouldn't be happening if I was still teaching just in person most of the time.
And like I said, I just saw the other day on Facebook that you were in California. I said, or you're teaching a course in California. That
Yeah.
was really cool, I thought, you know, and it can be just as effective, if not more so, because in some respects, would you say this is true, that people are more comfortable working out at home and communicating even with you, as opposed to being in a classroom? You know, sometimes people get nervous or uptight having to communicate, but with you on the internet, some people I find they're even more comfortable than if they're in person.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's actually a lot of people that benefit from that. Even though I think there'll always be a small group of people that say it's too hard to learn online. I need to be in person, because there are people whose learning styles just fall in that direction. But I think a lot of people genuinely opened up to what the virtual world can provide. And you know, things like Zoom are great, but I think a lot of us were familiar with kind of webinar style, talking at people. Not everybody was already familiar with breakout sessions and how you could really bring people together. And so that's where my knowledge of that stuff from before, I was really able to just like amplify that. So students would come, learn, get to talk to each other, test things out, come back, learn again, talk to each other, go test things out, you know. So we created some great interactive classes that I think still provided that real activity piece, right? That interactive piece, because sometimes you have to do things to learn them. That's definitely true with my topics.
Well, it's so funny you said that, because my first SCORE seminar for on the internet was a webinar. I hated it. You know, it's just very, very staid. And then I did the next one. I said, no, I want to make it interactive. So I learned from it, like you said, and it was really kind of cool. It was interactive, but you just have to get better at it and work with you or work themselves and get better at it. So you'll help people also uh, learn how to teach and present on the internet in a classroom situation.
Yeah, I had a wonderful time last year collaborating with a number of other educators and speakers who have already been teaching online. And over time, we got to prepare some really awesome classes last year that were really successful, helping people really transition. So I even did a class last summer twice where myself and a partner teacher out in California, who's a vegan chef named Chef AJ, she and I put together a class where we were teaching people how to design their own virtual programs. And so it's been exciting to see people actually do it. So I got to watch people take our class, and then I got to see them selling and promoting the class that they created when they were working with us. And so that was really exciting. And I worked with all sorts of different people, people who were artists, people who were in more traditional businesses, people that were just doing all sorts of different things around health and wellness. And so it was amazing to watch, them really blossom into putting themselves out there.
How do you work with somebody, Sarah, who comes to you for the first time and they've been in business for a lot of years, but they'll say to you, and they probably use these words, hey, I'm new to this whole digital marketing field, or I've never done anything on the internet. I just want, you can't do it anymore. I just want to have people come into my little retail store downtown Nashville and, sell to them. But now all of a sudden, past year and probably going forward, they can't just do what they did for the last 10 years, 20 years. How do you get somebody into digital marketing for the first time? What do you tell them to do?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think the first thing that I do with everyone is I debunk a whole bunch of myths. So the very first conversations I have are really what I call the marketing real talk, which is if you want to move into this space, it's going to be a challenge and you're going to have to work for it. It's not going to happen overnight. I also have a lot of conversations with business owners where I explain to them digital marketing is not something that you just hand off to somebody else and wash your hands of it. It's absolutely essential as a business owner that you stand in a place of leadership when it comes to your marketing, even if you're not going to do the day-to-day tasks. And so I try to start with, like I said, what I call the marketing real talk, to be like, all right, what do you understand about this? Usually they're going to feedback with me, sort of a list of things that I hear from all sorts of different people, and I'm going to correct it. I'm just going to straight up tell them, okay, so all these things that you believe, that's from 2004. You need to get rid of that. Right? That's not true because it's 2021 and things are really different. And so I try to really open up that space to be honest and to build sort of a trust relationship in the beginning. Because a lot of times I have to say to people, look, when I tell you that an idea that you have isn't going to work, or it's, not a good option for you to do things a certain way, it's never because I just want to say no to you or tell you your ideas are bad. It's because the technology is moving so fast and my number one job is to keep up with it. And so I'm going to have to constantly kind of reframe what you're doing to make sure you're not making decisions based on antiquated information. So I always start there. And then I really just try to encourage people to approach it with fun and not to see marketing as a burden. Marketing is often seen by many people as kind of a promotional gimmick or just some kind of annoying thing that you have to do. And I've really made it, I feel like, my purpose over the last few years to get rid of that, because it's a stain on my whole industry that what we do for a living is so terrible. I even wrote an ebook called Everyone Knows Marketing Sucks. And
I love that title.
I really wanted everybody to acknowledge we kind of have this bad attitude about it, but there's so much opportunity and there's so much fun to be had. It's such a creative space. It's a space full of stories. It's a space where you get to make real relationships with the people that you actually serve, whether you're a business, a nonprofit, just an individual person. I mean, it's a place with all this beauty inside of it, but we have to approach it with that intention. Otherwise, it is a grind.
How do you deal with this one, Sarah? And I've heard this asked at some of the seminars you teach at, and said, hey, this is cool, but I don't have the time. Boy, that's it's going to take me a lot of time to do this. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I always try to tell people is you don't have to do everything.
Exactly.
Right? So when you take classes with me, I was actually saying this to someone earlier today that I was consulting with. A lot of times when people talk to me, immediately their feeling is, this is a fire hose in my face and I can't. It's like I'm talking to a business owner and I just gave them a to-do list of 30 things. And so they actually feel upset about the conversation. So I've paid attention to that feedback over the years. And I really try to let people know right away, we're going to look at all the options. We're going to talk about your goals. We're going to talk about the people that are the best fit for you. And then we're going to figure out how to leverage your talent, how to leverage your resources, and how to find something that you're going to enjoy. And we're going to start there. And we're going to do it consistently. And we're going to give it 110%. After that, after we get results with sort of one path, then we can start adding other pathways that we're reaching out to people. But I think usually what happens is people feel this pressure to have everything. They have a website, a blog, a YouTube, an Instagram, a Facebook, a Twitter, a TikTok, a Snapchat, and they're just like, I don't know what to do with all of this. And I'm like, what are the top 2 things you want to do? Let's go back there and start there and really strategize and have purpose. And then after we get those things going, we can have phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4. We can add those other things in. So I try to really encourage them to take it from that perspective.
It's funny because I still remember that as one of the first things you taught me. I mean, I said this the very first time, I think I told you I met you at Leadership Asheville, you were doing a talk. I was like overwhelmed by it. I said, wow. And this was a long time ago. Yeah, it's just, it seems a long time ago. But then you said, you made the point, hey, you can't do everything at once. And if you do, you're going to be overwhelmed. And so I got the impression was you were showing us all this stuff that's out there. But then exactly you said, concentrate 1, 2 things at the most. But people just can't do one. If they do 2, it's a lot. If they do 1, it's a lot. And do it well.
Yeah.
But I think also the point, I think it's kind of an important one, is that you get to try it. But if it's not for you, no problem. Try something else. You don't have to keep doing it if it doesn't work for you. You know.
Yeah, I was actually spending some time. I'm on the board of AIGA Asheville, which is a beautiful organization here in town that's mostly focused on design and creative people. And we were having a conversation last night where I essentially was reiterating to everyone that there's kind of 2 things in marketing you have to remember. One, the to-do list will never be done. It will never be done. You will never get to check the list completely. You will have to create a world where you know when to stop yourself and take a break, because literally in the marketing world, there's always more content to be made. There's always more people to connect with. So you have to be really comfortable with the fact that you don't get to sort of like come to fruition. It's like this never-ending movement that you're going to be doing, just like any other relationship is, right? That's how all relationships are. They don't just kind of exist. They continue to evolve. So that's all marketing is. And I think that's a really important piece. And the other thing we talked about, which I think is related to the fun, is really figuring out how to be in an experimental mindset, right? When you're doing marketing. So especially when you start out, not feeling like you have to marry yourself to something and not feeling like everything has to be perfect. We now have tools like social media that allow you, especially as a startup or a new brand or a new company, to actually like put things out in the world and get feedback, and then evolve and put things out, get feedback and evolve again. And you can actually tell your own existing customers or potential customers, hey, we're just starting out and we're going to try a bunch of things and we want to know what you think. And then we're going to refine our strategy. And you can do that in the real world now and still build a great following, still find people that are interested in what you do without that pressure of making everything perfect or making everything right. I think experimentation is so important because that's how you learn what your audiences want. And what matters is what they want, not what you want.
Well, you mentioned something else too. It kind of scares a lot of people because they get overwhelmed by it. But you said, blogging is, everyone should blog. But what I use, and I'd like to get your reaction to it, but I just use the example of Seth Godin. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And again, people think they have to blog. They have to have 750 words every day. And it's incredible. They'll have a blog sometimes of 17 words,
Yeah.
and it's a great blog. And I read it, but it's funny. People get hung up on thinking, as you said, I like how you said, it's kind of the perfection aspect. It has to be perfect. And nobody said your blog has to be perfect. Nobody said it had to be 750 words.
Yeah. No, in a world where we're making content every day, 5 days a week,
Right.
which is pretty much what a lot of us are doing, you're not always going to be awesome. That's just the reality. So you're not always going to be awesome, but you can be useful. You can be relevant, right? You can do other things. Sometimes you're going to hit it out of the park and be amazing and people are going to love it. But it's funny because to your point, should everybody have a blog? I mean, if you're a terrible writer, no. Like you really shouldn't. You might be better at video. You might be better at graphics. You might be better at photography. All of that stuff has a place and could still attract people to you. So that's what I meant by leveraging your talent, right? You have to figure out, especially if you're a business owner doing your own marketing, what parts of you are going to be really useful in the marketing world. You're going to delegate the rest of it for the most part. And when you start out, you're going to focus your energy on the things that leverage your talent, not necessarily force yourself to do things that are just unenjoyable and that you don't feel confident about yet. Because if you do that, what happens is you procrastinate, you're not consistent, you don't get results, and then you feel like you've wasted your time. So a lot of people, like I said, they feel this pressure to be like everybody else. And I'm like, no, who are you and what are you good at? Put that forward first.
You also mentioned something else, kind of a key word, like just talk briefly about it, and that's the idea of consistency. In other words, another thing I hear from SCORE clients and AV Tech clients is, do I have to do this every day, or twice on Sundays? How important is consistency if you want to have a social media presence? How important is it to do it? How often?
So I feel like it kind of depends on the platform and it definitely depends on your goals. I think, for just a good example would be if I'm looking to sell products on my website and what I want is for people to go from social media to my website and buy my products, I need to really be more aggressive in my overall tactics because getting people to buy my products is going to be a journey, right? I'm going to have to get to know these people first. I'm going to have to introduce different things to them that are low buy-in, easy investment. And then eventually, after I build a relationship on social media, I'm going to be able to hopefully ask them to actually spend money and become a full-fledged customer in some way. That would be very different if I was, a company who was just looking to generate leads and network with people and get them to become clients or refer other people to me, right? So the strategy would be a little different. I might not have to post every day if I'm lead generating, but if I'm trying to do e-commerce sales, there's going to be a lot of extra work that goes into building that relationship. And the other thing too that's interesting in those worlds is like e-commerce. If I'm going to have people click over from social media to my website better be awesome. I better put a lot of time and energy to my website. It better be mobile friendly. It better load fast. People better be able to figure out exactly what to do really quickly because that's the nature of online shopping, right? Amazon has kind of trained everybody to have this like immediate gratification that they want. Whereas if I'm actually trying to, like, I'm a business to business person, I'm trying to build relationships with events that'll want to hire me, build relationships with clients, find students that want to come to my classes. I can maybe downgrade the pace while I spend more time like one-to-one communicating, making myself available to people, sharing out content that's really relevant and useful and shows them what it's like to learn from me. So, based on your goals and the platforms you're choosing, it adjusts. So Facebook and Instagram, I think they're the harshest taskmasters. They really do require like daily attention. Sometimes you can take the weekends off depending on what kind of business you are, but at least once a day, if you want to compete in that marketplace, they're just really big sites with a lot of content. And if you want to get to the top of the algorithms, you have to be willing to create content. But the flip side is it's got to be good because you can post 5 days a week. And if nobody engages, you're not going to get seen. So I would rather you dialed back and did better content and higher quality content that got more reaction than more content and got less reaction.
As you're speaking, it's a really good point because it gets me thinking about like YouTube videos. Videos are great, but again, if you come up with one good video, your point about the quality, as opposed to having to have a YouTube video every day or every other day or something, you're not going to be able to do it. So what I hear you saying is just do one and and really work with that and promote the heck out of that, as opposed to having to come up with that one every single day. Tough
exactly thing. That's a great example.
Sarah, let me ask you this. If folks want to get in touch with you, either to take one of your courses or to find out what you're doing, what's the best way to keep tabs on you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to jbmediainstitute.com or you can go to sarahbenoit.com. And both of those websites will tell you a lot about my teaching and what I'm doing. And then, of course, if you're on social media, you can look for Sarah Deborah Benoit basically on every platform and find me there. So LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook are probably my top four. But I really like to make myself available to people there and connect with folks there. So my personal social media is really wide open to people.
Okay. And I'll just mention to folks as a recommendation, please do follow Sarah Benoit because you're going to learn something if you meet this woman. She's just an amazing, well, I know you can as a teacher, and I think perhaps as a compliment, your SCORE seminars, I think, are always the most widely attended, the most quickly sold out when they actually had people attend the session, that, and hopefully we'll have that sometime again in our lifetime. Sarah, thank you very much for being my guest this first half hour in Blaine's World show. And again, I hope we sometime get to see you in person again.
Thank you so much. It's really great to see you, Blaine.
Okay.
I really appreciate you inviting me.
Okay, be well. Speak to you soon. So I'm going to have Sarah disappear if we can. And if I get my next guest in, Sarah disappear. There's our next guest. And I'll be with you. There he is. I'll be with you in 1 second. Just want to mention one general announcement, and that has to do with WPBM's mission. You're listening to the station is to foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides the medium for artists, businesses, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on the radio. Listeners are invited to help support WPBM's efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution. You can do so by going to the website, WPBMFM.org, and looking at the donate option on the upper right-hand side. It's next my pleasure to introduce my second guest, and he is Bill Branyan. Welcome aboard, Bill.
Thank you. Great being here.
Okay, but you can also feel free to wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world who are watching you. Okay, a salute. And I should mention that Bill is interesting guy, as you'll see. He calls himself a freelance historian. I also call you a sort of an activist or community activist. He has a BA in chemistry and history from Vanderbilt, a MA in history from Western Carolina, one of about 10 founders of the Mountain Express. He's a journalist, author, activist, candidate, reader, athlete, and he's been working on his latest book, Advanced Romance. That's going to be your fifth book, Bill, is that it?
Fifth book.
Okay, and you grew up where, Bill?
Anniston, Alabama.
Okay, when you were a kid growing up in Anniston, Alabama, did you always know you wanted to be 17 different things simultaneously?
No, I was pre-med at Vanderbilt for a while.
Yeah. So when you want to be pre-med, but you just always amazed me since I've gotten to know you, that you have this wide range of interests. That would say that's a true statement, that you're interested in lots of different things.
Yes. I currently really got interested in Wall Street after the GameStop sting, and I've been reading just about Wall Street for 6 weeks now, about 4 hours a day, and you just follow your bliss, and I seem to get excited about something often.
That's kind of interesting. I don't necessarily do what you do, but is that when you follow your bliss, like you said, or you study something, you'll study it almost intently for that a short period of time to become knowledgeable about it in a very quick period of time?
Yes.
I guess that's your background as a historian also. Is that what you would do? You'd study it?
Yeah. You're writing a paper about something. I my first book was a sci-fi book about Billy Graham. So I read all the books about Billy Graham, all the books he'd written, and I'm an expert on Billy Graham now.
But what's
In fact,
interesting,
I know what he's doing in heaven, by the way. Not very few people know that, but since my book is sci-fi, he is in heaven.
I was going to say that's interesting. When you wrote the book, though, he was alive?
Yes.
Okay. Did he ever get it? Did you ever share the book with him?
No, I didn't. I went to the Cove.
Right.
I sent it to him several times and didn't get a response. But I did go to the Cove and a lot of his other places and tour around. So I felt I knew him pretty well. Okay. I was raised on him. I had to watch him twice a year, several times a week.
Okay, so you remember it well. Let's kind of fast forward then, Bill, talk about something that you followed and you helped me become smarter about. But I guess you became interested at one point in time in the F-35, the plane. What got you interested in that?
Well, it was there was the controversy flying around about whether to allow Pratt and Whitney to build their plant here, who builds airfoils for the engine of the F-35. And I realized that nobody was really concentrating on what that F-35 was. And I've done this in the past with the USS Asheville nuclear attack sub, which we got named after us in about 1989. And it was just great fun exploring what it does. You know, it had 15 nuclear missiles that shot up from 300 feet below the ocean and could go around the world or flatten all of the major cities in North Carolina. And so you sort of play with these ideas. And the F-35, it didn't take me long to learn that this was quite a plane.
Well, I
And-
think I think that's a great way to describe it. You know, it's like you see a baby, you know, my what a baby, you know, or
Yes.
this is, I mean, without, and I like how you described it there, without at this one time being judgmental. You just said this is quite a plane. Great. And I love how you do that though. That's very effective, because you're not, until you get to know you, you don't exactly know where you're coming from, if that makes sense. You know, I'm saying that as a compliment, that as I get to know you, I find out a little bit more about you. But that's kind of a great thing you do, that you just are just, I guess, be interested in a topic before you come out with an opinion on it. Is that what you try to do?
Yeah, of course I have. Yeah, I have a lot of presumptions, but I try to moderate them as best I can. And in the F-35 article, you're interacting with editors at the Mountain Express, and so you're forced to be pretty objective, to not go off on tangents too much.
Well, I like what you said in terms of the article I read from you a couple months ago, and even now, like you said, the F-35, whether it's good or bad, we'll hold that for a second, but it's quite a plane. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, and so just imagine, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at Sunset Mountain, and this F-35 could fly over that Sunset Mountain at 1,250 miles an hour, and then stop right in front of, let's say, Claxton School on Merriman, and stop and hover in the air and shoot 55 bullets a second. It's got a Gatling gun, four barrels of a Gatling gun, 55 bullets a second. Each bullet about this long, each cartridge as big as a beer bottle, 55 a second. And then it could zip off and retain the 1.78 Mach 1 in about 12 seconds. Or it could just land on Merriman Avenue, just like a helicopter. And it's not like a Harrier. You might have known of the British Harrier plane. When you see it land, it's all shaky. This plane lands completely smoothly. And it's got radar that's supposedly, they say, 1,000 times superior to any other plane in the world. And so it can hide in the skies, it can block enemy radar. And I talked to a test pilot, Tony Brick Wilson. His test pilot nickname was Brick. And he said, well, you know, that Gatling gun is great, but we probably never use it. We won't get in dogfights because the enemy will never see us, because we'll fire our ARAM missiles, which are infrared guided, GPS guided, and heat guided. And then we'll be headed home before the missile hits the target, and before the target even knows we're there. And so it's just this, you know, massive promotion of technology that the Air Force and the Navy and about 10 other countries have all been working on together.
How big is
Israel? Go ahead.
How big is the plane?
How big is the plane? I'd say it's about 30 feet long. But another aspect is Israel has already used theirs. We've already sold about 50 to Israel, and they call it the Awesome One. And they've flown it to all of the Arab capitals just to show that they've had these planes, and the Arabs can't detect them. You know, they just fly over them. Who was that? And one article said that Ayatollah Khomeini fired his security chief when these planes flew over Tehran, because he said, you know, but there's nothing they can do about it. This plane is so superior.
So now, fast forward to where we are now in terms of a plant is coming to Asheville, or a plant is already in Asheville to build these plants.
They flattened 100 acres. It's now a big mud pit. It used to be a beautiful forest on the French Broad. Now it's 100 acres of mud. And yes, they're just beginning construction.
And so what's the status of it? So they're beginning to build it, and then it's going to be we're going to be making planes here?
Well, we're going to be making the airfoils for planes, for the engine.
Right.
It's just a fan. It's just one. There's about 5 fans in the engine, and we're just making one of those fans. We're one of 1,900 suppliers in the country that make parts for the F-35. So this is sort of what the military industrial complex does, is spread it out so that everyone's involved. And so yeah, we'll just be making those fans for that engine.
And when's that slated to take place?
About a year.
Okay. And so in having this plan, and we'll kind of talk about some of the positive aspects of it, and we'll talk about some of the, concerns that people have. But that would seem to be good in certain respects for the Asheville area. It's going to be hiring people to build these parts of the plane. Is that correct?
That's right. They say 800 jobs, about making over $60,000 a year for each one.
Okay, and that's pretty appealing, I guess, to certain people.
That is appealing, but you can look at it like this. To me, whether you like the plan or you don't depends on whether you like U.S. foreign policy in recent decades. I think our Middle East foreign policy has been totally misguided, and Vietnam, of course, it has its reputation. Most people don't question Korea much. So you could, if it's as bad as, if we're just making a mess in the Middle East, which, we've made Iraq, Afghanistan, helped make Syria, Libya, helped make Yemen into failed states where warlords rule. That doesn't look like a success to me. Then you say, well, this is a horrible factory. And then you say, but only 20% of it is used for making these weapons. Well, if it was the mafia, and they had some nice restaurants and they had some nice entertainment places, but 20% of their operation was extortion, murder, and what's some of the other words? But you wouldn't support the other 80%. And so if you think U.S. foreign policy is hurting peace on earth, and in fact, maybe leading to World War III, then you say, no, we can't have 20%. And the 800 jobs is highly dubious at that point.
Let's take that a little step further. So you mentioned 20% is going to be building the parts for this plane. 80% is going to be doing what else?
Parts for other planes, for civilian planes.
Okay, so that's
like there was just a wreck, in fact,
right
last week, the Boeing 777, and one of the airfoils shattered, as I understand it, which is what we're going to be making. And you can see a fun YouTube of this jet engine on fire. Somehow the plane landed safely in Denver, I think.
I saw that, yeah.
But yeah, so that's the exact part we're going to be making, except for military planes and other planes, yeah.
So as you see it, what's the alternative then to not make these?
Yeah, the alternative is to question the military industrial complex, which is what, Asheville voted. 55% of the Democratic Party of Asheville voted for either Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, or Tulsi Gabbard. And they were all for drastically cutting the defense budget. And this is the biggest item on the defense budget, the F-35. 1.5 trillion is the total cost. And so it would probably be cut. Now, as far as the 800 jobs, I think we could attract other factories, considering the incredible subsidies we're giving this plant. Most people know about the 27 million in tax breaks for the county, the 15 million in the state, the 100 acres that Jack Cecil is giving the company, the 11 million for the bridge that goes to the thing, but they don't talk about the federal government paying the 20% of the people who are making the engine. So the payroll of this company is 55 million a year. So that means 11 million of the payroll we're paying for, we're paying for in our taxes. And the plane is supposed to dominate Earth's skies for 50 years. So that's $550 million more in subsidies we're giving this plant. And you would think we could find a plant that could make some nice hiking shoes or mountain climbing shoes, or, sort of the outdoor sports we have here, if we gave them about $600 million in subsidies.
Even half that, you could do quite a lot with it. But let's talk further though, Bill, about your point. So right now we're on the road to building this plant, and right now it's on the road to eventually be making parts for this plane as of today. So is there anything that can be that people don't like this or are opposed to this? What can they do to kind of voice their opinion?
Well, there is a Reject Raytheon group, and Raytheon is the parent plant of Pratt and Whitney, and it's the biggest builder of guided missiles in the world. And so it's a great group. They meet once every 2 weeks. They just had a demonstration in front of Biltmore Park, which is where Jack Cecil has his offices. And they're just an ongoing, they see it as an educational opportunity to show how the military industrial complex comes in and takes over a town. Many believe that this is just first aerospace factory, that there's going to be several others, because it's a 1,000-acre spot that Jack Cecil owns, and he gave Pratt and Whitney 100 acres, and he thinks they think they're going to build a whole lot of other aerospace factories here. So we could be coming from, we could be changing from the land to the sky, the New Age capital, any way you like it, to sort of all this artistic view, the Paris of the South, to the land of the sky rulers, the World War III economy, the merchants of death metropolis. We could be changing the total character of Asheville now.
So you mean we'd have to give up the Asheville is for the weird, or whatever that logo was for you?
No, Asheville is for the super duper killers who know how to kill people fast.
It's an interesting point. Are you active in that group you just mentioned?
Yes.
If somebody wants to get information just on that group, what would they look up?
Facebook, Reject Raytheon. Just go to Facebook, Reject Raytheon.
Simple enough. And they can then voice their opposition to it, or if they don't want to move forward. Do you think there's any chance of this being successful? Of
them stopping it? Well, again, 55% of Asheville voted for presidential candidates that wanted to stop it. So it's a matter of harnessing those people. And yeah, even if it gets to the point where it's producing, it can still be stopped. Again, back to the mafia analogy. If you think this is producing horrible killing machines for a terrible purpose, then it can be stopped anytime.
I guess a little bit has to do with Asheville folks who did support it, and some of them, not necessarily call them out by name, or we could call them out by name, but are pretty, you would think they're somewhat liberal folks or anti-war folks, yet they supported to move this forward. Isn't it like, the county commissioners and other people, didn't they say that we should move forward with this?
Well, that's the great mystery, because you keep wanting to calling me an activist, and I guess I am, but I was a bigger activist.
No, by the way,
that's
a compliment. I'm just saying that as a very positive thing.
And I was a leader of sort of anti-war activities in Asheville in 1990, the first Gulf War, and we had a teach-in and lots of demonstrations, and we went out to Warren Wilson College, and they had a big movement going there, and the head of that movement was Brownie Newman, the chairman of the Calhoun County Commissioners. So that's what's got me scratching my head, is how this confirmed peacenik is now a supporter of this, one of the most advanced killing machines, war machines in the history of humankind. And the second person is Jasmine Beach Farrar, who we were just talking about, is going to run for Congress. And she calls herself a preacher of the gospel of peace, but somehow she's backing this plane too. So it's very confusing, and all I can think of is Jack Cecil gave them an offer they can't refuse.
Well, it sounds it. Not only monetarily, but the land, the whole bit. So moving forward, I guess another thing, and you and I were talking about this off the air, is that if people want to do something about almost anything, they have to get active in it, as opposed to just complaining about it, and let's talk a little bit about that process. Because again, you had told me that, one time you ran for office, maybe you'll run for office sometime in the future, but unless people come forward that they can't, I always contend they can't complain unless they're willing to go out on the line to say that this is wrong, so.
Yes. You just keep working at it is all I can say. And one of the things, I hate to say it because I'm a big fan of Jasmine and Brownie, but they need to pay for this decision. This is a character changing decision for Asheville, and it was done without much notice in advance. And the way they pay for it is at the ballot box, or somebody running against them.
The tough thing, it sounds, with this issue though, is that there are a lot of other issues out there, and so I guess the question I'm asking you is, how do you decide, like, the one, this is your most important issue, yet other people have other important issues, and so do we have to agree with everybody says? What I'm getting at, in other words, is this a disqualifying, in your opinion, it might be, is this a disqualifying thing to not consider voting for somebody because they supported this?
Well, in the primary, no, but in the
Yeah.
general, yes, I would certainly vote. And as I said, I agree with most of what Jasmine and Brownie do, but this is not, this could be World War III. If we keep stirring up the hornet's nest in the Middle East, we're negotiating right now to try to keep Iran from getting nuclear weapons. Pakistan's already has them. Israel already has them. And we just keep pouring violence into it. Then it's hard to imagine an issue that's bigger than World War III.
For sure, and your point is a good one too, in that we keep selling the products too, so we build them and we sell them to other countries. And I always kind of wondered about that, that.
It's just so sad. We have this, we barely have, but we still have this beautiful democracy that, our ideals were to get away from kings who just like to fight wars for the fun of it. And now we're doing sort of what the democracy of ancient Greece did. They just got Athens, they got so big and confident, they started colonizing all the Mediterranean. And finally, the Peloponnesian League rose up to try to stop them. And that was the end of Athens. And here we are, we have these great ideals, but instead we're spending half our budget on war. And it's just horrible.
How I think I first met you was through some of your writings, either on Facebook, you're pretty prolific on sharing your opinion. I guess that's one of the things that's certainly true about you. I don't think you're very reluctant to share your opinion, your opinion, which I commend you for. You like sharing it. But then I read that article, I think I told you, in Mountain Express. It's the first time I had paid attention to it, good or bad. It should have been, but it wasn't on my radar screen, And you said that a lot of people, it's a very significant issue, and a lot of people are concerned with it. But I contend that a lot of people, it's still not on their radar screen, in terms of scale of 1 to 10. The election was most important. The changing voting requirements are most important. All these other things out there that we could protest and complain about. It's tough to have, like an unlimited list of things that are important to us, if that makes any sense.
Well, this time of history is something else, right? The first time we hadn't had a peaceful transition of power.
Yeah.
We may still lose the democracy in the next 6 months, for all we know. So yes, we want to, I think, number one, hold on to the democracy, but number two could be control the military industrial complex.
Well, you mentioned too, I'm just grateful that back, when we're taping the show, that we didn't have some people were telling me that we weren't going to have a new president. All of a sudden Biden was going to be overthrown and that Trump was going to become president again. So who knows? Let's talk in remaining time a little bit about the fact that, so you spend a lot of time and energy on this, but you also are writing a new book. What's the basis of the new book?
Well, it's called Advanced Romance, and I have a co-author from New York named Lauren Aberone. She's a licensed family and marriage counselor, fairly well known up there. And we have 16 fundamentalisms that we think have changed about relationships now. Fundamentalism is like the failure, if not forever, fallacy. So this is, 50% of Americans get divorced now, but it used to be if you got a divorce, you were a failure.
Right, exactly.
In your life maybe, and certainly in your relationship. But now with 50%, you shouldn't look at yourself as a failure anymore. That's just, that's a sad way. Or the wreck the ex fundy. You break up with your ex and you got to trash them. No, you may get together with them again in the future. And besides, people break up all the time. I think 83% of people experience breakups in their lives. And so if we're going to have everybody hating each other, it's just tough. Or the sex industrial complex fundamentalism that contends that if you're having a good time with somebody, you have to go to bed with them. And that's, why do that? Why put it on this new plane? You're still getting plenty of sexual energy from it. You don't have to have sex, but that's what the movies want you to do, and that's what TV wants you to do.
How'd you come up with the idea for this book?
Just thinking about it. I've been thinking about romance for about my first delve into it. My second book was called Asheville, NC, circa 2000 AD, and it was sort of a Thomas Wolfe effort to expose all of Asheville, 200 almost recognizable characters in it. And but the subtitle was Confessions of a Serial Monogamous, and it's sort of a semi-autobiographical in the fact that I've never married, and and the realization that most Americans are serial monogamous, because the basic definition is you've had 2 or more sexual relationships in your life, and almost everybody's done that now. And so let's look at it that we all are serial monogamous. And so that was in 2003, and I've been writing on that really since then and thinking about it.
What gives you an idea to write, this upcoming book, which I love the concept, it's a really cool concept, or any other future book? What gives you your inspiration for writing?
Just interest. I get really interested in something, and well, like the F-35, it just seemed like it was going to be so much fun to write about and to learn about, and and you sort of get, oh, this is an interesting door I'm looking into, and it'll probably, I do like to be published, I must admit, it's probably going to get published, and if I can arrange these facts, first of all, find them and then arrange them in a way that people find engaging, then that's an exciting process to me, as well as for myself.
By the way, even as you're talking about it, it sounds like a fascinating concept to me. I'd love to read the book. So I see that hopefully down the road of a book. The whole process, how we got from this and finding Asheville in this community and then building a plant. I see that, as your 6th book, be the case. Last question: do you prefer writing or studying something?
Well, writing is, you're looking in the door, you see an interesting door, you go in it, you study it a little bit, but while you're studying, you're also commenting on it. So it's a mutual process, studying and writing.
And I'll give you a compliment as one thought on that. That's, like I said, one of the things I enjoy following you on Facebook, because you certainly do share your opinions. You're not reluctant to not post them, but I really like them because they get me thinking. Like I said, I don't always agree with them, but I like the fact that, you're out there and you certainly don't hide from, publishing your opinion. So I want to thank you for that. And lastly, we're winding down real quickly. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best bet, Bill? Bill, I think we're breaking up a little bit.
I've lost you. You lost me.
Okay, I think we lost Bill, but I'll just kind of conclude, Bill. I'll just say, okay, we kind of froze, I think, on your end, Bill. But I'd like to thank you for being my guest this second half hour on the Blaine's World Show. Bill Branyan, if you want to get in touch with him, just look him up on Facebook, on the internet. You'll see a lot of stuff from him. I'd like to thank also Sarah Benoit, my guest the first half hour. Also, Amy Prisnash, my producer. Look forward to having you join me next Wednesday here on WPPM 103.7 in Asheville at 9 a.m. You can also listen online at WPVMFM.org and watch on WPVM's Facebook page. And Bill, I'll be saying goodbye to you, even though we kind of lost you somewhat in the vision. But anyway, a pleasure having you.